Dirtle Magic. Hello and welcome back. You can follow our post on Twitter and Facebook at DirtleMTG to stay up to date on our latest videos and other posts, and you can join a more robust discussion about Casual Commander at our blog, thedicebag.blog. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this content to help the channel and the blog grow. Another way you can support the channel, though, is through our affiliate links in the description below. If you're looking for single sealed product or gaming accessories to protect all of that glory, please consider clicking the links in the description. Now, grab some spells, it's time to dirtle. Yoshimaru, get out of the trash! Come here, come. Good, good boy, come on. There we go, okay. Nothing in there for him anyway. Sorry about that. Today we're trying out some legendary 1/1 counter synergies with Yoshimaru and Reyahn, last of the Obzon. Making a stand against us are Piru the Volatile, Kaervek the Merciless, and Kardur Doomscourge. I win the roll of the die and draw an Avenger of Zendikar. I drop a Snowfield Sinkhole for a Frosty start and pass. Piru has an Arid Mesa come into play. It's cracked to retrieve the Badlands. Phyrexian Reclamation then hits the field. Kaervek drops a Mountain. Command Tower hits the field for the Kardur player, and they use the mana from it to cast a Wayfarer's Bauble. To me, and I draw Snow-Covered Plains. I play an Overgrown Tomb tap, and cast the most regal of partners, Yoshimaru. For reference, all the basics in the deck are snow. Piru plays a Mountain, and then casts the Talisman of Hierarchy. Kaervek drops a Swamp into play, and then casts a Rakdos Signet. Over to Kardur, and they drop a Blood Crypt into play untapped. They lose 2 life, and then use the mana from their lands to crack the bauble for a Swamp, and pass the turn. To me, and I gain Despark. I play a Snow Plains, and cast Nikara, Lair Scavenger. Yoshimaru gains a counter when she comes into play because she's legendary, and I get to look for Yannick in my deck, but since he isn't in there, I just shuffle. I go to combat, and swing the legendary dog into the Cater player, dealing 2 commander damage, and pass the turn. Piru's turn has the swift cast of Buried Alive, which puts Esper Sentinel, Gisela Blade of Gold Knight, and Bloodgift Demon into the graveyard for later reanimation shenanigans. Kaervek drops a Mountain on their turn, and then summons Zozu the Punisher. Landfall decks beware. Kardur begins their turn with a Blightstep Pathway into play, taking 2 from the newly summoned Zozu. They cast an Everflowing Chalice, kick twice, and pass. Bane of Progress is drawn my turn, and I cast Thalia, Heretic Cathar, and Yoshimaru gets yet another counter. In combat, I swing Nikara into the Kardur player and Yoshimaru into the Piru player. Damage is good, and when the Piru player drops down to 36 and up to 3 commander, and Kardur goes down to 32. 2 Piru and Necromancy is cast. It returns Bloodgift Demon to the battlefield to provide that player some extra card draw and a rather large flyer. Kaervek drops a Swamp, taking 2 from the Punisher. Vengeful Pharaoh is cast, and they pass the turn. The Doomscourge feels right at home when they drop a Lava Claw Ridges into play. They then cast Underworld Connections, enchanting their Swamp. The enchanted Swamp is then activated with its newly endowed ability, and the Kardur player draws a card and loses 1 life. Arcane Signet comes down to finish the turn. My turn brings me the Mighty Shadrix Silverquill. Unfortunately, I haven't gotten a new land yet, and cast Joriel just to grow the good boy. In combat, I send Yoshimaru into Piru, and Thalia into the Kaervek player. Damage gets through, and Piru is down to 32, while Kaervek is down to 35. Moving to the Piru player, Bloodgift Demon triggers for the first time, and they select themselves to draw the card and lose 1 life. Talisman of Conviction comes down, followed by a Doomblade against Yoshimaru. The Doge heads back to the command zone, but because it had a counter on it, Nikara triggers, drawing me the Knight of Autumn, and I lose 1 life. Kaervek drops a Badlands into play on their turn, taking 2 damage from the Zozu, which ironically has hit them more than anyone else this game so far. Thrillkill Assassin then comes down without Unleashed, and then Migrim follows it to the battlefield. Kardur begins their turn with an extra card by activating their Swamp and losing 1 life. A Mountain then hits the field, and they take 2. The Doomscourge himself then graces the battlefield, and everything becomes super goated. Hidetsugu, the Devouring Chaos, then comes down, and the big burly demons glare at the table with malice. My turn brings me to an isolated chapel. I play the land, thankful I finally got one. I also take 2 damage. I then cast the Knight of Autumn, and when it enters, I destroy the Necromancy on the Bloodgift Demon. This has the effect of getting the demon back into the graveyard, which works for me. Moving to attacks, I swing my available attackers into the Piru player because they are super good and I have to. Damage is good, and the Piru player goes down to 24. Piru's turn begins with an Arcane Signet. Blasphemous Act follows, and the board is wiped of its creatures. Phyrexian Reclamation is then activated, but because I had auto-yielded through the turn, I didn't get to see what they returned to hand. Kaervek starts their turn by casting Winds of Change, and I suppose whatever they got back doesn't matter anymore. Our hands get shuffled back into our libraries, and we draw that many cards. I get a Snow Plains, Valentin, Reyahn, Bane of Progress, Temple Garden, and Nature's Claim. The Kaervek player then plays a Blood Crypt tapped, and passes the turn. Kardur uses their Enchanted Swamp to draw a second card on their turn again, losing another life. They cast Talisman of Indulgence, and follow that with Underworld Dreams. Cryptolith Fragment is then cast, and a Sulphurous Mire drops into play. To my turn, and I draw a Plains and take 1 from the Underworld Dreams, going down to 36. I play a Temple Garden tapped, and then cast Valkmira, Protector's Shield to negate the Underworld Dreams damage. Piru takes 1 damage from the Dreams at the start of their turn. Dockside Extortionist then hits the field, and they gain 9 treasure. They use said treasure to help cast a Grave Titan, which when it enters gives them 2 2/2 zombie tokens. They then cast Reanimate, and bring Gisela Blade of Gold Knight back from their graveyard, but lose 7 life to do so. They also cast Kokusho, the Evening Star, and pass the turn. Yeah, that's a pretty good field for now. To Kaervek, and they take damage from the Dream. The Merciless One is then cast, and promises nothing but destruction. Moving to Kardur, they draw an extra card again with the Swamp. Bonder's Enclave hits the field, and Kardur reappears on the stack. Kaervek triggers, and the controller of that permanent deals 4 damage to Gisela, which is actually have to do because of her static ability. Heartless Hidetsugu hits the stack, and it's kind of like a deja vu, I suppose. Kaervek triggers like it does, and the damage is assigned to Gisela again, netting another 2 damage marked on her. Lightning Bolt is then cast by the Kaervek player to finish Gisela off, and the turn rolls over. My turn, and I gain a Swamp. I play it, and recast Yoshimaru from the command zone. Kaervek deals 1 damage to the Piru player with the trigger, and then I cast Reyahn, last of the Obzon. Kaervek burns away the zombie token from that trigger, and I pass the turn. Temple of the False God hits the field for Piru to start their turn. They move straight to combat afterward, and attack the Kaervek player with everything, because they are super goated. Maybe it should be doom goated? Anyway, the Grave Titan makes 2 new zombies when it attacks, and Kaervek blocks the attacking zombie token. The rest of the damage is good, dropping them down to 18, and Kardur and Vengeful Pharaoh trigger. Grave Titan is killed by the Pharaoh trigger, and Kardur drains each of their opponents for 2 because 2 creatures died this turn. To the Merciless One, and they take 1 for the drawing of a card. They recast Vengeful Pharaoh, and they go to combat. Kaervek, being forced to swing, does so into me, and I decide just to take the damage. That damage is 5 commander, and I drop to 29. Back to Kardur, and they activate the Heartless One. Each player takes damage equal to half their life total rounded down, leaving Piru at 5, Kaervek at 8, them at 12, and me at 16. The Enchanted Swamp is tapped again for some card draw and some life loss, and Spawn of Mayhem is cast. Kaervek gets to burn again, and does so against the Kardur player themselves, dealing 4 damage. Desecration Demon then hits the stack, and Kaervek burns the Piru player out of the game with that 4 damage. Ob Nixilis continues the demonic pain, and Kaervek burns the Kardur player for 5, dropping them to 2. Ob is activated once he's in play to draw a card, and that player loses 1 life, dropping them to 1. To combat, and the Desecration Demon triggers, but the Piru player and I sacrifice nothing since it doesn't have haste. To my turn, and I draw Kamal's Druidic Vow. I briefly consider Nature's Claim in my hand being not the best at the moment because of the life gift it gives, and drop a Plains. I cast Valentin, playing very cautiously against the Kaervek player, but with the trigger, they use the 1 damage they get to knock the Kardur player out of the game. I then cast Kamal's Druidic Vow, where X equals 4, and the Kaervek player deals 6 damage to Yoshimaru by paying the extra 1 to target it thanks to Valkmira. The Bestest Dog gets sent back to the command zone, and Reyahn triggers to add the counters it had to another creature. I misclick and select Reyahn instead of Valentin, and move to resolve the vow. I don't get much off the top, and drop a Phyrexian Tower and Lenore into play. I move to combat, and Lenore triggers, drawing me a 3 visits. I swing with Reyahn into the Kaervek player, and they trade with it because the Pharaoh has Death Touch. Reyahn triggers upon death along with Valentin. I move the counters to Lenore, or I try to, but for some reason they don't apply because the game says Reyahn had 0 counters. Sure. I also do not pay for Valentin's ability to exile the Pharaoh. I pass, pretty confused about the development. Kaervek's turn has them casting Animate Dead to bring back my Knight of Autumn under their control. When it enters, they destroy Valkmir, Protector Shield. That's a sadness. They go to attacks, swinging with Kaervek. I decide not to block, and take 5, going down to 10 and up to 9 commander. My turn draws me into Hamza, Guardian of Roshan. I drop a Plains, and cast a Bane of Progress. Kaervek triggers and deals 6 to me, and I drop to 4. When the Bane enters itself though, it destroys all artifacts and enchantments, gaining 3 1/1 counters, and the Knight of Autumn leaves play and gets exiled by Valentin. I pay for his ability this time, and gain a Pest Creature token. Moving to combat, Lenore triggers, drawing me a Meathook Massacre, and I give the counter to Valentin. I swing with the Warlock, and deal 2 damage to the Kaervek player, and gain 2, going back up to 6, and they drop to 5. Kaervek drops a Dragon Skull Summit, and then they pass with no cards in hand. I draw Krav the Unredeemed for my turn. I briefly consider my options, not wanting to burn myself out of the game. I decide to head straight to combat, drawing Camball and adding a sweet 1/1 counter to Valentin off the Lenore trigger. I swing with Valentin, dealing 3 and gaining 3, putting me at 9 and Kaervek player at 2. In the second main, I cast Camball, and Valentin gets blasted for 3 by Kaervek, which is unfortunate. I pass the turn, perhaps playing too cautiously for my own good. On Kaervek's turn, they cast a Razaketh they just top-decked. Luckily, it doesn't have haste, and their life total is too low to make use of it. They pass with no attacks. Back to me, and I draw Inspiring Call on my turn, though I only have 1 creature with a 1/1 counter on it currently, so it's not the best. I formulate a plan to reach around their creatures on the other side, with Meathook Massacre, and put it into action. I go to combat, putting a counter on Lenore, and drawing an Evolution Charm. I skip the rest of combat, and go to my second main, and cast the Massacre, where X equals 3. This will only kill my Pest and Camball, but that's all I need. Kaervek does trigger though, and after a pause, they try to burn away Camball. Unfortunately, I have to let him go, but I have a backup plan. Massacre comes into play, and I respond to the triggers by using Phyrexian Tower to sacrifice the Bane of Progress. It dies, triggering the Massacre, and the 2 life drain from the enchantment, once it all resolves, is enough to take my opponent out of the game. Good game to my opponents. I've been working on making a fun 1/1 counters deck for a long time, but I'm always unsure about how much I end up enjoying them, so they usually don't stick around. This deck in particular also cares about legendary creatures thanks to Yoshimaru, and death triggers thanks to Reyahn. So it adds some focus to the deck, and it's not just a pile of 1/1 counter good stuff. After playing it a bunch though, I'm now tempted to try Nakar and Yannick because, as you know, I do love my Blink decks. Perhaps in a future video we'll explore those commanders. Thank you for tuning in to another casual commander game here on Dirtle Magic. Until next time, stay safe out there.